G'day guys and welcome. My name is Michael and I am the Deadaussiegamer, here to share with you my tips, tricks, ideas and strategies for playing and running tabletop role-playing games. Today we're going to be taking a look at cinematic combat. This is a particular type of combat that I use in order to feed narrative and roleplay into my battle sequence and make a game more dynamic, more fun, and more engaging, even during those kind of high and kind of rigid battle sequences where it's dice and digits. Basically, this video was actually inspired by a video I'd watched by Matthew Perkins, who's got his own YouTube channel. The link to that video will be in the description below. And it got me thinking, why is it that people try to do combat efficiently, like super efficiently, to the point where they're always prepared with their dice rolls, always make sure their turns take the least amount of time? And the end result that I ended up with was, it's because we don't roleplay during battle. We don't get into the story. It's just simply our powers versus their powers, our roles versus their roles, and that's it. But who's to say that needs to be the case? Why don't we add roleplay to our battle? That is where cinematic combat comes in. Now, again, many years ago, I watched a video by Dawnforged cast, and a very, very big shout out and thank you to Andrew Armstrong for inspiring this. Got me thinking about the idea of adding roleplay to combat. So this is a small step-by-step process on how I handle turns during battle in order to add narrative and roleplay. So here is there it is, step-by-step. So first of all, we have our instigator. This is the person whose turn it happens to be. This is the person who is taking their action at the moment. Step one is they need to acknowledge what's happening around them. This could be as simple as acknowledging your adversary is there. This could be acknowledging the previous person's turn and what has just happened and occurred. Step two is reacting. Acknowledging that something has happened is only one part. You need to make sure that your character has a tangible response to what has happened. The bugbear has just ripped the head off a child. My character turns and yells out, "You monster! I will tear you limb from limb. I will avenge that child!" Ah! Then, instigate. Then have your action. Take your turn. Take it whatever it is. But don't just simply talk about the mechanics. Don't go, I take a move action, I make an attack action, I do this action, I do that action. Make it something dynamic, right? Describe what it is you're doing. I charge with my axe drawn and I swing down, aiming at his chest. Rage filling my face. Describe it. Make it an actual thing. Then when it comes to rolling, roll all your dice together. And make sure you know what you are doing before you get to this stage, right? Now, I don't mean like a fighter, you need to know how many attacks you have. I mean, have all your calculations ready and waiting, right? Roll your attack die at the same time you roll your damage dice, both simultaneously, and go, okay, cool. I got a 41 to attack and I got a 27 damage. Your GM will then take that information and run with it. Don't go, I rolled a 6 and then I add 14 and then that is 20 and did that hit? Nope. Okay. If it did hit, then I'll roll a d8 plus 3 and then I've got rage and I've got bardic song. Don't do that, right? Have all your stuff written down on a little scrap of paper, right? I actually have an ongoing scrap that I usually like to keep writing stuff down. So I always go, okay, cool. My base is always 15 for attack because that's what I have. And then I've just charged, that's plus 2. And then I just, as I'm doing stuff, just keep adding stuff to that piece of paper. Because the simpler that your step 4 is, the better the whole thing works. Now, once step 4 is done, once you've done all the mechanics and the step and the things. Also, little time out there. If you are a spellcaster, great bit of advice. Print out your spells. Have them in front of you. Read them out because they also come with a little bit of flavor text as well. That could be really great for this role-playing thing. So, again, once you've done step 4, the target of your ability or power is then able to react. So whether that's the GM playing a character who's just been hit in the chest by this axe, who steps back with blood drenching his hands as he looks and he growls, or if it's someone being healed as a player and simply turning and saying, thank you for the heal. These little things mean combat is more dynamic and more engaging. Now, there are many other benefits to playing combat like this. Now, let me start by saying the flaw, of course, being it will take more time and it does take a little bit of effort and practice to get to the point where you're doing this seamlessly. But the benefit is that when you do step 1 and step 2, whether it's you, whether it's the GM, whether it's your teammates, simply acknowledging your actions in combat and acknowledging the actions of your allies will actually help validate what it is you do in combat. When we do actions in combat, the last thing we want to do is find out that no one's paying attention. Yep, I roll my attack. All right, fantastic. Yep, I hit, I do 6 damage. And then the next person comes up and goes, huh, what just happened? Oh, okay, yeah, I hit him as well. Yep, that's cool. Okay, next person. When we start playing like that, it is no wonder we want to get through combat because it's boring, it's dull. But to be acknowledged, to have another person at the table sit there and recognize what you do is a really great feeling. It promotes that sense of you wanting to tell more about the story, you wanting to engage in this cinematic combat. Simply having someone say, dude, you've just been hit by a great axe. As he's been hit by a sword, my character turns to the bugbear and says, how dare you strike him? You will not defeat my friend today. Are you all right? Let's get this guy together. And suddenly you're building up a story. You're building up an adventure in the battle as well as in your regular roleplay. My belief is that if you get to this stage and you can genuinely feel that sense of excitement, that wonder, that beauty of roleplay in battle, it won't matter if it does take a while. Alright, so one thing I've done today is I've prepared for you guys a scripted version of this whole scenario. It's going to go through a few different bits, and I'm going to break them down as we go through. So do enjoy. I do hope the story is actually interesting, because I kind of wrote it a bit quickly. So here we go. During your watch that night, Barrick, the fighter, you hear rustling coming from a nearby wood. Yeah, alright. Well, Barrick reaches for his warhammer and inspects the area. Okay, roll your perception. Okay. With that result, you make out the silhouette of 2 furred beasts circling the camp on all 4s. They seem to be hiding in the underbrush, but you can make enough out of them to make a knowledge nature check if you have it. Okay, Alright, yep, I get this. Alright, you identify them as timber wolves. Alright, Barrick steps forward, standing between his sleeping companions and the creatures he saw, and cries out, "Wolves!" We then go into initiative. So at this point, you can kind of see already that there's this whole part where Barrick, the player, is using third-party speech in order to keep a distance between himself and his character. By doing this, you always build the story, and there's no confusion, as if he says, oh, I will go and inspect over here, or I will pick this up, or what do I think of this? You know, it helps separate those two and make the narrative stronger. All right. Initiative is rolled. The wolves get to go first, followed by Barrick the fighter, Grundy the alchemist, and Eliza the cleric. The wolves get to go first. So step 1, acknowledge. At the sound of Barrick's shouting, react. The wolves rush from the woods in attack formation. Instigate. The wolves attack Barrick with razor-sharp teeth, getting on either side to flank him. Rolling dice for the results. All right. Calculating the results. Then revealing them. Now, this usually goes into the GM's purview. Whatever the results are, the GM should fill them out. On occasion, if it's a death scene, I like to let my players decide how they die, but that's just flavor. One wolf finds purchase in Barrick's thigh and manages to tear into his flesh, while the second wolf bites at him and misses. Barrick, even though he feels the tug of their vicious jaws pulling at his legs, manages to stay firm on the ground and avoid being tripped and knocked to the ground. Reaction. Barrick now has a chance to respond. Well, Barrick swears in Dwarven at the wolves. Using his hammer, he tries to keep some distance between him and his furry friends here. Alright, we then go to Barrick's turn. Alright, so now I'm going to do this without saying all the breakdowns, and hopefully you guys will be able to see where it actually plays out. Alright, with the wolves surrounding Barak, Barak says a prayer to the god of strength. He swings his hammer down, aiming to strike the wolf right onto its back with his power attack. As he swings, he feels a twinge in his leg from where the teeth marks bit in. Alright, Barak's aim is true, and he hits hard as you hear the sound of a thud and some ribs breaking as the hammer hits the wolves. The wolf yelps in pain. It snarls at the dwarf angrily. Grundy, it is now your turn. Acknowledge. Awakening at the sound of barking and shouting. React. Grundy reaches into his alchemical bag, knowing that a battle is about to ensue. He emerges from the tent with a few alchemical fires in hand. Looking over at Barak, he asks if he is okay. Now, this is the reactions phase, so this isn't him doing anything just yet, or at least not doing anything of note. Yes, he's gotten up and he's taken a move action to come outside, but, he's still building the scene. At this point, he has thrown a line over to Barak to be able to respond. As a GM, let that happen. Let it just flow, because this is still going into that role play. Him asking Barak if he's okay. Barak turns around and sees Grundy and says, I don't know, what do you think? Maybe ask one of these snarling doggos if they're okay. And Grundy says, very humorous. At which point he reaches and throws, hurling a bottle of alchemical fire into the face of one of these wolves. Result. Alright, a small explosion and a whiff of flames erupt from the blast. However, the agile wolf manages to avoid most of the damage. The wolf turns to face its new assailant, glaring angrily with the flames from the small fire licking against its face and casting these vicious shadows across the campsite. So, we see again, we're going into that reaction phase. And we get to that point where we're now telling a story. Eliza now has her turn. Acknowledge. Hearing the sound of an explosion from just outside her tent, Eliza isn't sure if she's dreaming or not. But as soon as her eyes flicker open, she sees the flames burning outside her hut. She hastily rushes outside, yelling, What's going on? At this point, Grundy or Barak is open to reply and say, We're being attacked by wolves. Eliza begins to chant in a divine spell. Homne le se valahans vekala ne hahalas. Reaching out towards Barak, she casts Heal. As the healing light flows towards Barak, he feels as though his injuries are becoming less severe. At this point, we're back to the react phase, and Barak has a chance to react to Eliza's action. Even as simple as saying, Barak takes time and says, Thanks, Eliza, but you'll need to get your mace and get out of here because I'll need a hand. As you can see from this very short round of combat, and I mean, yes, it is scripted, so yes, it does sound a little bit more polished than you may be able to improvise. By simply having these point forms, battle has gone from being just this contest of numbers to being more about the story, more about the adventure, more about realizing that things happen in this game and everyone has feelings and emotions that are a part of this fight, So that's kind of what we gear towards. All right. So before we sign off, let's talk about some of the pros and cons of using this method at your table. And also, let's get rid of this big beastie. There we go. All right. So, con. It will take time. It'll take time not only to run these per round, but it will also take time to get good enough to be able to do it ad lib. The trick is to not be afraid to fail. Not be afraid to sort of make mistakes. And of course, to always be prepared to try and improve yourself as you go along. The second major drawback comes from the acknowledge and react phase. It can be very easy and very simple for people to turn around and simply repeat the action of the previous person. So for example, in the instance where we saw Eliza hearing the sounds of the explosion and sort of seeing the flames, instead of making it about that, it's as Grundy throws a bomb, Eliza wakes up and goes outside. Now, that doesn't really react to what is happening. You know, it's sort of like taking a very, very cheap shortcut to get to that stage. If you don't put in effort, then of course the people who put in effort feel underappreciated. If one person is going into an interesting story where they're like, you know, taking the time to acknowledge another player, taking the time to really engage them, and another person isn't, it can be very disheartening, especially if you have to rely on the person that comes after you to do it. And if that's always the same person, well, you know, it does let everyone down in total. So you ideally want to play this kind of style of combat with a group of people who are at least willing to kind of put themselves out there and try at least a little. Now again, don't try and make this like a whole big massive scene, this huge long spiel. It's not about that, right? It is about very short, sharp, succinct, single sentences. Acknowledge what's happening. Hearing the sound of this as he watches this, or he holds his breath as something happens. Then react. Again, your character taking that moment to acknowledge what has happened in-game, in character. As someone gets punched in the face, he winces and goes, "Oh, that looked like it hurt. All right, let's help him out." Right? It doesn't have to be this dramatic moment of interior monologuing. It doesn't have to be this full-on conversation between two people. It can be something simple, succinct, as long as it acknowledges what the previous person had done. Lastly is you want to make sure you're avoiding being passive-aggressive. Now, I played this style of combat with a guy who is a hardcore rules lawyer. Like next level. And this guy's role-playing, I think he's played the same character like every time he's played. Like I've never seen him actually role-play properly. So in one particular instance, he was at a game and he was playing, and long story short, someone was enchanted, he was confused. Yeah, confused or dominated, and he was attacking another person. So there was the person being attacked, the dominated person, there was this guy who was the rules lawyer who was trying to help, and then there was this fourth person who was like kind of like your bard, kind of like your cleric, you know, he was kind of a support character. So we got into the battle, and as one person was basically choking out this other dude, the other dude was like, "Please help me." And this guy's like pulling him off, pulling the bad guy off his friend. The support guy was basically like, "Well, I can't really do anything in this situation, so I will acknowledge what's happening. You know, like, oh no, you know, I fret, I panic, I scratch my head. Sure, that's perfectly fine." But then when it got to the rules lawyer's turn, he basically said, "Well, as I listen and watch this person do absolutely nothing and continue to be a useless drag on this team, I will continue to try and help pull this guy free from our ally who is attempting to kill him." Now, see, when you start doing that, you're basically asking for trouble. It's not the spirit of what this is all about. You need to make sure that you don't have this animosity. You don't have this kind of negative influx of kind of what you're saying. You need to have something that's positive, something that acknowledges what they're doing and makes them feel good about it, even if they are, say, not doing anything. You know, as I'm trying to wrench this guy free, I turn over to the support character and say, "Hey, do you think you can give me a hand here real quick?" That is way more productive than simply being passive-aggressive about it. Yeah? So, again, those are the cons. Now, what are the pros? Why should we use this in our game? Well, to be frank, again, I think the biggest thing that people want to get rid of combat for is the fact that it's so bland, it's so flavorless. You know, the GM, in my opinion, is the only one who really throws himself into the roleplay of a battle. You know, he is describing the intricacies, the sights, the smells, the sounds, the pain, all of that as the battle ensues, but the players are trying to get through their turn. You know, the players are trying to win. And I think it's just that slight shift, that slight, I suppose, autonomy that is then given to the players to allow them to be able to build the narrative in the combat that I think will really help this whole thing thrive more than anything. Alright guys, thank you so much for joining us. Do be sure to check out all the links in the description below. Like I said, I'll have a link to my Facebook page where I've actually got an article on this type of combat. A link to Matthew Perkins' page, which is obviously what inspired me to make this video. A link to Andrew Armstrong's page, which will be the original video which inspired my particular mechanic behind this. And of course, a whole bunch of other stuff that you can find me on, ranging from Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, even my Patreon. If you guys want to support me, that'd be absolutely fantastic. So that you guys know as well, regarding Patreon, we now have our $40 tier where we will be streaming our Patreon games via Twitch. So that's going to be exciting. We are going to be running, we are running Strange Aeons, and we will be running the Tyrant's Grasp, the last Pathfinder adventure path to be released. So that'll be a lot of fun as well. So if you want to join them or if you want to watch, then yeah, come check it out, and we'll hopefully see you there. Till next time, guys, as always, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and game hard or die trying. See you later.